Welcome, Motenta people. Despite the charming smile he wore for the camera, Gene Kelly was as human as the rest of us. He had fears and flaws, which he tucked away from his audience. But secrets have a way of getting dug out, and Kelly's dark secrets have finally seen air. Was Gene Kelly a monster or a legend? Make sure to watch the video until the end and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you're new here, join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Motenta's channel. On-screen Hollywood stars seem unattainable. They are stars in every sense of the word. You look up at them, twinkling in all their celestial majesty. But there is a difference between how Hollywood stars are when the cameras are rolling or flashing at them, and when the cameras are away from them. Gene Kelly was a Hollywood star that became synonymous with hope and optimism in post-war America. His energy when performing his dance numbers and his glee when he hopped, stepped, and skipped brought a unanimous conclusion. What a perfect guy. But Gene was far from perfect. He was just your regular Joe with drive, passion, competitiveness, and insecurity. Yes, he was insecure. The athletic Kelly was driven to perfection that nothing else mattered. This attitude, with his competitive streak and insecurity, made his co-stars conclude that he was a monster of a man. Debbie Reynolds didn't have fond memories of the man, not one. At age 19, the actress was still raw. She had no idea what to do when it came to dancing. However, she was cast in the iconic dance musical film Singing in the Rain, where she had to star among the best of the best, Gene Kelly and Donald O'Connor, two dancers whose feet had scars that spoke tales of their experience. So moon-eyed, the actress felt being in a picture with Gene would speed up her learning process, as the actress would admit afterward. It did make her a better dancer, but it was a harrowing experience for her. Gene Kelly was not particularly a good teacher for her. He was dismissive, and nothing Debbie ever did was impressive. The young actress at the time needed to feel encouraged. Rather, she felt put down like a lame warhorse. In short, he put Debbie through the ringer. Before then, Debbie hadn't danced a single step. Yes, she had featured in musicals and delighted audience with her sonorous voice. But her feet? Her feet didn't prance around. So she felt Kelly was picking on her, expecting her to know these things as an actress who had performed in a musical. "I had 3 months to learn what Gene Kelly and Donald O'Connor had been doing for years," she said. And she didn't stop there. She called Kelly a cruel taskmaster. At some point during the training, Reynolds ran off the set, hid, and sobbed away. It was heartbreaking, but she got the encouragement she needed. No, it didn't come from Gene. Fred Astaire, the man Gene was always compared to, was shooting a film at another part of the studio. Fred, nearing his 50s, looked at the sobbing Debbie with soft fatherly eyes and sat down next to her. He didn't tell her to quit. Calmly, he told her, "You're not going to die. That's what it's like to learn to dance. If you're not sweating, you're not doing it right." Debbie was re-energized, and she returned to the set in time for the filming of a 4-minute dance number. Take after take, Kelly complained until they danced for 15 hours straight. The filming started at 8 in the morning and finished at 11 at night. At this time, Debbie's legs were stained with her blood, and she had to be carried off. Exhaustion overtook her, and for 2 days, she couldn't do anything but rest. Eventually, Gene used the first take. Then, despite feeling wrung out, when it was time for their kiss scene, Gene took Debbie aside and stuck his tongue into her mouth. Debbie spat and sputtered. She hadn't been French kissed before, and immediately after shooting the scene, Debbie Reynolds scoured the set for Coke to rinse her mouth. For her, it was horrifying. She didn't want a 39-year-old man to be the first who would kiss her in such a manner. In her mind, at that point, Debbie only thought one thing: monster. She wasn't the only Kelly co-star that thought so. Esther Williams called Gene a jerk after she worked with him in the film Take Me Out to the Ball Game. Honestly, calling him a jerk was her being nice. She would have loved to have said more. Besides Kelly's harsh dancing demands, he asked that the taller actress slouch whenever she shared a scene with him. As talented as he was, Gene was insecure about many things, his height included. Esther bent so much that she had scoliosis, and if that wasn't enough, he also insulted Esther for being too tall even when they sat. She was more honest when describing him as merciless. Then there was Sid Charisse, who also starred in Singing in the Rain. Though she was accustomed to grueling conditions as a ballerina, working with Kelly pushed Charisse to her limits. She was equally as critical of Kelly as Debbie was, and she had none of the post-event appreciation that Kelly had. Charisse was billed to perform the Broadway melody dance sequence, and Charisse felt it would be an easy feat. Charisse was wrong. Despite being a professional ballerina who had years of dancing under her belt and had worked with dancing legend Fred Astaire, Kelly complained bitterly about Charisse. Like Debbie, Charisse went home bruised. She would say at one point that her husband always knew she was working with Kelly by the bruises she came home with. She had no such problem with Fred Astaire. Fred Astaire, the man who the great Gene Kelly was always compared with. The two had different styles of dancing. Kelly's dance routines were more physical and needed athleticism, while Astaire relied on flowing elegance, which suited his style. He had to move in a high-tempo fashion to dance with Kelly and be acrobatic. Kelly was anti-Astaire with his dance philosophy, and he kept on innovating new moves rather than sticking with the established routine. Gene himself rejected comparisons between him and Astaire. He said, "If Fred Astaire is the Cary Grant of dance, I'm the Marlon Brando." But if Gene was being true to himself, he could be secretly in competition with Astaire. The acrobatic dancer had an incomparable competitive streak and hated losing. The athletic dancing star usually invited fellow stars into his house for volleyball and a charade game. It was supposed to be a fun get-together gathering, where stars cooled off from the stress of hopping from set to set, but it never truly was fun. A volleyball game with a dance maestro was enough to tense the fun atmosphere, especially when Kelly lost. After losing a match, he stomped his feet on the ground so hard that his ankle broke. That broken ankle cost him his leading man role in Easter Parade. To guess who? Fred Astaire. Relax, Kelly. From then on, some stars avoided going to Kelly's house for fun. The star's competitive streak was so strong that he challenged Olympic skiers to a race. Of course he lost, and had a horrific parting gift too, a torn knee cartilage. The injury put a comma in the actor's dancing career. Admitting the seriousness of the injury, Kelly said, "This was the end of serious dancing for me." No wonder working with Gene could be hellish. He held himself to the strictest standards. He performed a dance sequence in Singing in the Rain while burning up with fever. He also held others to the same strict standard. Whether talented or not, no one could satisfy Kelly, not even himself. Despite his boundless talent, he never saw himself as an excellent film actor. He never saw any of his films. Kelly said, "I had an awful feeling that I was a tremendous flop." Pity the actor. Couldn't see how he had evolved on-screen dancing. Legend or monster? For those who knew Kelly, this is a difficult question to answer. Judy Garland wouldn't feel this way, as he took a role in Judy's films to help revive her dying career. Also, would a monster innovate dance routines to suit their dancing partner? That was what the legendary innovative dancer, Gene Kelly, born Eugene Curran Kelly on August 23, 1912, did. The Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania-born actor, despite his competitiveness, wasn't selfish and didn't try to hog the spotlight for himself. In his dance number in the iconic film, Debbie was the focus of the dance, according to the actor's design. According to Patricia Ward, Kelly's young wife before his demise, he pushed the younger actress because he knew she would become a big star. He always wanted her to look best in the scenes. But the actor may have taken this too far and got the stick for it in the end. His competitive nature always had the better of him. However, Debbie grew to understand and kept a relationship with Gene. As Gene said, "I wasn't very nice to Debbie. I'm surprised she still speaks to me." Other stars didn't come to that kind of understanding, not even his buddy or ex-buddy, Stanley Donen. Gene married Stanley Donen's wife, and that would have fueled Stanley's dislike of Gene Kelly, whom he had begun to work with since Kelly's first show, Pal Joey. While Stanley was a chorus dancer, Gene headlined the show. Gene was Stanley's choreographer for some dance routines, and the two enjoyed a relationship fueled as a mentor and protege. Then the two became equals and worked as co-directors. The two fell out when Coyne, Stanley's wife, who had served as a dancer and assistant for Kelly, declared her love for Gene Kelly, despite being married to Stanley. Coyne was 10 years younger than Kelly, but didn't care. As soon as she saw that Kelly and his first young wife, Betty Blair, were having relationship problems, she swooped on the man and remained with him until she died from cancer. It was the ultimate betrayal for Stanley, who immediately severed the relationship with Jean. There had been friction between the two due to Jean's off-screen attitude, but the thing with Coyne was the last straw. All's fair in love and war, or so they say, just that the vanquished can't see fairness when they are sore from defeat. Their fight was so bad that Donen rejected participating in his mentor's documentary. His reason? He was certain he would say bad things about Jean and would rather keep quiet. However, Donen admitted Jean was one heck of a dancer. He said, Jean as a performer was among the wonders of the 20th century. His agility and his talents at being at what he would call a song and dance man were very winning. Even in their grudge against Jean due to his off-screen antics, the people that worked with him couldn't deny his genius. Imagine this. Jean didn't want to be a dancer when he was a kid, but he became instrumental in how people viewed dancing as he grew older. That boy who didn't want to dance returned people's interest in dance musicals. Jean revolutionized dance films. He constantly innovated and wanted to make dance as physical as possible. His dance routines weren't based on the grace and the lightness of the feet of the dancer. He was more energetic and required a heaviness of the feet, heaviness in the sense that his dancers were always stomping their feet. His innovation was a result of his childhood. Jean was born to a family of dancers, and it was his parents' expectation that Jean and his brothers should dance. But Jean was athletic. He excelled at whatever sport he took part in. Football, hockey, baseball, volleyball, and gymnastics were the sports he engaged in and excelled in. He wanted to become a sportsman, and he played semi-professional hockey while he aspired to be a baseball player, particularly a shortstop. But Mama and Papa said no. He had begun to take dancing lessons, but the young lad brimming with masculinity wasn't keen on becoming a dancer. He felt it was a feminine endeavor and got bullies' unwanted attention. Fistfights were the only way to resist the attention of bullies, and he fought many times. At some point, he quit what he felt was the cause of his misery, dancing. Then he came to a realization. Girls loved a dancing man, and he couldn't completely shake off his involvement in dancing due to his vaudevillian mother. Jean joined her in the family act, the Five Kellys, and he, like his family, realized he was a gifted dancer. The family created a dancing school, which Jean ran along with the family despite being in college. Kelly was a tutor alongside his siblings, but it was Jean who shone the brightest, and due to this, the school was renamed after Jean. Jean's brilliance as a dancer was because of his determination to change what dance was. Remember, he was bullied for dancing because his bullies felt it wasn't masculine enough. Now, Jean was determined to make dancing masculine. With this drive, Jean went to many dance shows, watched dance musicals, and visited clubs. He memorized routines to teach his students and also made some routines up. His style accommodated more dancers who didn't have the natural grace expected from dancers. It wasn't that Kelly wasn't graceful. He is a professional ballet dancer who, within a few months of training, began to tutor his fellow students. Such was this man's genius. He decided to learn ballet because he always wanted to evolve. Then he decided he wanted to be more than a teacher, especially when famous Broadway stars who had seen him dance told him he had more than enough talent to act in Broadway shows. Success eluded him for a while, but it began to change for the better for him when he got a role in Leave It to Me as a chorus boy. Then his performance in The Time of Your Life put him in contention for the lead role in Pal Joey, a role he almost missed out on due to the song he auditioned with. He got the role and was winning off-screen, marrying his younger sweetheart, whom he was older than by almost 11 years, Betty Blair. His young wife was also an actress, and he did all he could to boost her career, taking her to meet the industry's movers. His young wife bore him a daughter, but they briefly separated during the war when Jean chose to serve in the Navy. The couple reunited, and Jean dropped his daughter off with her grandparents so he could bond with his wife. However, his marriage to Betty wouldn't last. Betty had begun to feel she married too early and would want to experience more things than being shackled to Jean. She cheated on Jean several times, and he knew, but he felt it was a phase for her and it would pass off. The talented dancer wasn't ready to end the relationship with Betty because of her cheating. Their relationship ended, however, and Kelly remarried twice. The man, through his troubles with his former wife Betty, remained focused on his legacy of bringing dance to the people. He wanted the people watching his films to see themselves up there dancing. To heighten the effect his film had on people, he invented the new camera, the Ubangi, which got the low-angle shots that would make the audience watch his dance in cinemas. Kelly won. He brought dance to the audience and made dance an athletic endeavor in which people didn't have natural grace could participate. His genius was unparalleled, and since his death from having multiple strokes, his influence in the dance music scene hasn't waned. Was he a monster or a legend? He was both. In the end, he was a victim of his own competitiveness. These Hollywood actors always had interesting lives behind the camera. For example, why Doris Day's husband wanted to kill her? Let's find out.